Hey everyone, hope you're good. Welcome to The Great Debate. We are here for season 2 and we are back in the building, but we're in a different building. We are in the front room, which is an amazing music and art space deep in the heart of South London. They're doing amazing things, so go online and check them out. Okay, so for season 2, we decided to come back and continue the conversation. Season 1 was one that we did on Zoom. I got a panel of my trusty friends to discuss UK gospel. And the original question actually was, do we have any timeless music? And if not, why not? And as you can imagine, that opened up a whole can of worms. So we couldn't leave the conversation there. So we thought we'd come back and discuss it again. And also bring some more people, some esteemed guests. We'll come to you in just a second. So as I say, I've got members of my trusty panel to my left. Introduce yourself.
Becky.
I'm Smooth, aka Bishop. Matty.
And as you can see, we have even brought Zoom with us onto the Kinney. So you probably can't see the order in on here, but top left I've got Ryan. Say hello, Ryan.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And at the bottom I've got Branware.
Yo, what's happening?
Wicked.
I've been searching.
To my right, I have a multi-award winning artist. I like to call him 50% artist and 50% worship leader. He is none other than Called Out Music. Welcome, bro. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure.
So you might wonder why I have our brother here. Today we're going to be discussing the line between worship leader and artist. Is there even a line? Are they the same thing? Are they not? What does it look like? Can you just be an entertaining gospel artist and not have to feel pressure to have an altar call every 10 to 15 minutes? You know what I mean? Is that a thing? Is it not? Let's discuss it. So bro, I'm going to come straight over to you.
Sweet, yeah.
And I'm going to ask you a question. In your opinion, is there actually a line between worship leader and artist?
Okay. So if you asked me this question 6 months ago, I would have said, yes, they're two completely different things.
Wow.
But now, after having experienced both of them, simultaneously, it's like the heart behind it is exactly the same because it's ministry. It's about people.
Okay.
And it's about reaching hearts. But the worship pastor role or the worship leader role is almost about engaging a particular church in a culture of worship. So a lot of your time is actually invested in speaking to people on a regular basis. So a lot of what I did in my role was actually probably 20% leading worship.
Wow.
And it was like 80% pastoring people. Because people call you at 9, 10 p.m. This just happened. You have to talk to them. You have to pray with them. You have to listen. And it's from that place you then pour out into the church. And I did a lot of things like, you know, speaking on Zoom, midweek services, almost like teaching kind of. So that's its own pressure, and almost you find yourself creating for the church, which then makes sense why a lot of worship leaders write specific type of songs. Because you're in that space a lot. But artistry is like blank slate all the time. Just let me create. And so the way it's pushed out into the world is completely different because you have to almost brand yourself and market yourself in a certain way.
All right, cool. So I love what you just said. So you basically said that a worship leader is like a vocational job, basically, whereas an artist, it's vocational as well, I'm sure it is, but it's more about your expression, whereas a worship leader is like somebody who is for the people.
Yes.
All right, so let me ask the question. I'm going to go straight to the controversy. I'm not being funny, right? But it's 2020. Don't it seem like everybody's a worship leader?
Facts.
Like everybody's a worship leader all of a sudden, right? Smooth, I'm going to come to you. How do you, like, when you see people, and do you ever think you're actually an artist, or you're not really an artist, you're actually a worship leader? And how does that match up kind of with what Called Out Music just said, where he was talking about the actual pastoral element? Can you be a worship leader and that element isn't part of it?
For me, I mean, sorry to be cliche, so to speak, but I think it's Matt Redman who wrote the song when the music fades.
Yeah.
And all is stripped away. And I simply come. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to get into the words. But what it is, I mean, for me, it's like, don't get me wrong, I believe the two can work hand in hand.
Definitely.
But for me, maybe because I'm old school, I believe there needs to be, it's great to have the artistry point of view, but gospel music is a message. So if we're having the artistry point of view and the entertainment point of view, I think it needs to be backed up with the ministry point of view. And then the two need to marry up together, and there needs to be a balance. I find it quite engaging to watch some artists, because they grab your attention with their performance and the way they do stuff, and then when you reach the climax of the gig, so to speak, then they drop the word and the knowledge on you, and then it then opens you up because you've now been excited by the euphoria, so to speak, of the night. You've enjoyed the music, you've enjoyed the performance. You're more open to receive the ministry, and I think it is quite a powerful tool when an artist understands that they can be an artist, but they've still got the element and the accountability, of actually being a minister too. And that's my take on it.
I'm going to quickly jump to Noel. Noel, you are probably the leading black worship leader in the UK, with a career that kind of spans 25, 30 years or whatever it is. What's your take on what we're discussing so far in terms of that juxtaposition between being an artist and being a worship leader? And at the moment, I guess we're talking kind of theoretically. We haven't gotten to the music element yet. Yeah. But
I think, what's the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant?
oh, no, another analogy. Go for it.
Because part of their roles are the root of what they do is they deal with figures and numbers, and they're able to juxtapose numbers and all that kind of stuff. And the reason why I use that is that when we talk about worship leader, our big problem with that terminology is that we take it so literal, rather than go, all of us are worshippers, whether you are, if you're connected to the revelation of Jesus, we're all worshippers. That's what defines us first. So whether you dance or you sing or you create a spoken word or you rap, there's an element where you personally have to be a worshipper. If you play drums, you have to be a worshipper. If you play guitar, you have to be a worshipper. Now, when you use the word leader next to it, because of our church culture, and having to find a word that describes somebody standing up front with a microphone and encouraging people to sing truth, or to capture their imagination, or to entertain. The word entertain is not a bad word. The word entertain comes from the root word muse, which means to capture somebody's imagination. So when you're playing drums, and if you're given that space to play, then while you're playing, you're capturing people's imaginations for a moment. So I think that you can be both. You're both, you have to be both. Now, there's a specific calling when you say leader who stands on a platform, whose role at that present time is to encourage people to engage in singing truth so that their souls respond, or, faith rises, which is different from the act of a gospel artist. And semantics, words make it wrong, really, who stands up there and they deliver a word. Most, we'd say, gospel artists get to stand in a place where there are lots of unsaved who don't know the Bible, who don't know churchese. So there's a way that your gifting has to capture them. They're not a willing audience per se. Your ability has to capture them. And next to it comes the word that you present. So to me, worshipper defines me. Worship leader defines what I do.
Okay.
And the two are different.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
I
hearing.
don't want to complicate it, but that's how it makes me. It just means that I fit in wherever God wants me to fit in.
Totally. So I have a question then. At what point does artists come into that? Like, is there ever a time where I mean, I guess musically, like you're, as an artist, and I'm going to come back to you in a second, bro. Musically, as an artist, I guess your music is designed to bring people kind of into worship. So is there ever a point though where you're thinking like an artist rather than a worship leader? So you're thinking, I need people to hear this particular song, or like, for instance, I'll ask you a question. Have you ever been, you probably won't say yes to this, but have you ever been somewhere and the song that you're going to sing or minister has taken precedence over the mood of, so for instance, there's a Noel Robinson song that you want to sing, maybe you've released a new album or something like that, so you've got your artist head on, but then in your spirit drops Here I Am to Worship, which is not a Noel Robinson song. Will you be like, I'm going to sing Praise Awaits by hook or by crook? or
Yeah, I mean that's a tension. Being a creative and an artist whose primary function is to bring truth into any situation. Yeah, I mean that's why I'm a songwriter. I've tried to write songs for every occasion. Yeah. That's part of the journey. I don't just write songs for, writing sake because it's cool. I write with particular themes the congregation that I lead. They want to hear about faithfulness. They want to hear about love, God's love. They want to hear about grace. They want to hear about mercy. They want to sometimes have fun. They just there's this place of enjoyment, and I think that for me personally, I tend to sing mainly my songs because that's something that I spoke about some years ago, because I spent most of my life writing songs that I never sang because I was always using other people's songs, because I always felt that other people's songs were better than my songs. So I consciously made an effort that 80% of what I sing is mine. Now, there are moments when Holy Spirit just comes and just goes, and you go, boy, I just got to do this song. It's not mine, but it's in my spirit, and I've just got to release it. So when that moment comes, yeah, I do that. And I don't think that's an artist head. I think that's, even as an artist, yeah, you lay out your set before, or most guys laugh at me because I go, I lay out the set, but do I actually follow the set? That's another story. That's another story. But most times you lay out your set, because a lot of events I do, they want to know what songs are first, second, and third song. Because you've only got 15 minutes and you're supposed to lead worship. But your job is now to release those truths musically and make that work within the context of where you're going. Okay. I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
so
it does
I
make
think
sense.
for me, the artistry thing is what you do. It's not the way you think. The way you think is, how can I use my artistry to deliver this truth? So is the truth more important than the artistry? No, they come hand in hand. Because if the artistry is wrong for the truth, it drops off. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
You know, I'm doing, I think, so you choose the right song. Mike just went, Here I Am to Worship, no, Heart of Worship. I'm coming back to the Heart of Worship. Where does that song fit in? Do you know? It has to fit in somewhere, so you find the right place to fit it rather than go, I'm just going to run this thing, innit?
All right, cool. I've got you. I hear that, Noel. I hear that totally. Matty, I want to come to you now. Do you think it's okay for a gospel artist to not feel pressure to have to, I'm going to use the word minister, but that's the wrong word because it's all ministry, but to not feel pressure to have to bring people into a certain space? If you understand what I'm saying.
When you say certain space, you mean like call your worship leading?
Yeah, so no. So you're an artist. So an example is like, when I look at Kirk Franklin, it's not every show that he does where he's like, everybody's like speaking in tongues and in that space. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Kirk will come and give you 20 minutes of his greatest hits, spin on his head or whatever, and get off and everybody loves it the same way. I feel like nobody feels any less ministered to or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But then I think, and I'm like, I don't know that many more gospel artists I can think of that can do that or that do that. Why is that?
I think firstly, I'm not too sure if anyone said this yet, but I guess I'm not a worship leader or artist, but I'm saying I think it's important for worship leaders and artists to actually, I guess it's quite a simple thing to say, but maybe even like pray and ask God what God actually wants them to do. Because it might be a thing where God actually wants you to be a, let's say, an artist or a praise and worship leader, but I think there's no real rules, because if you was to, let's say, go by a particular standard or rule, maybe God actually wants you to become that artist and maybe be like that kind of Kirk Franklin type of artist that you said, obviously normally you don't really see him, you know, leading worship and everyone's speaking in tongues or whatever. But it's just like, let's say Kirk Franklin was like, nah, Ron Connolly does this, and that's the way. Yeah. That whole market or whoever the millions of people he's touched, most probably wouldn't have touched him because he's gone down a road that somebody else had and gone down a road that somebody else that God wanted for them and not necessarily what God wanted for him. Yeah. So I would firstly say maybe ask God what he wants for your life. Secondly, I feel that like Kudat said, it's you do it all with the same kind of heart and intention, but they are different, I guess. I guess the way you would maybe market yourself as an artist and market yourself as a praise and worship leader is completely different. Okay. Maybe just even the fact or the way your Instagram looks or your Facebook looks or the way you take pictures or the way you upload content. So I do think it is different, but yeah, I think the main thing really, if there's anyone that's like starting out or like not too sure what they're about to do, like it sounds weird, but maybe just ask like God what he wants you to do. I hear that. Because you might become something completely different that the world's most probably never seen before. Yeah, I hear that. So I would actually say there's no real rules, I guess.
Okay, interesting. Bex, what do you think about Matty saying there's no real rules? Because I feel like we could say that, but I think we could all think back to a situation where where we've heard a conversation and people like, that person entertained but they didn't minister. Yeah. We've all heard that one before, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, what is that? Is that a thing?
The thing is, there's rules, but they're not real rules. It's kind of like we've kind of made them up over time as
and
we've
made them up.
Literally, you made it up for yourself, and then obviously we put our own pressure on ourselves as artists, singers, musicians, etc., creatives, and then we're kind of like, I know if I'm going to do a performance or I'm going to call it a performance gig, whatever, in a church, you tend to go, okay, I know they're going to be looking for, like I said before, in bands, it's not oily enough. So you're like, okay, let me find my oil. Let me log into my oil, my oil. Right? So then you instantly go into that head mind frame. Okay, I got these 2 tracks that I turn up for the young people, and then I've got this slow one. This is the one where I really go in, and I know that God's on this one. And then you so you go through these 2, you go through the motions. Yeah, everybody turn up. Young people come to the front. And then you've got your little showstopper moment where you know that's when boom, I'm going to be downloaded into. That's how you kind of think, like you plan. That's how you plan for it to go. It doesn't always go like that. But do you know what I mean? That's where you're hoping that you get that little drop. And you're like, right.
Ryan, I'm coming to you in a second. Jump in, please.
I think that's all part of the artistry though, because I think it's important to know your audience. When you do know your audience, like for argument's sake, if you know you're going to a Kojic church, you're going to dress a certain way because in order for you to be accepted, you know what I mean, you can't necessarily, if you're a bit edgy, you got to rein it in just a little bit. Or if, you know what I mean, and if you go to a church where it's accepted, you can go all out a bit more.
What are you trying to say about my church?
You can't wear batty riders in Kojic.
Ryan, before
I've
these
seen
don't
it in church.
before
I've
these
seen
don't get
it
us
in
access
church.
off the internet, what are you saying? What are you saying to me about what we've been discussing, just kind of generally, and just that space in between? What's your thoughts on it? I know that you definitely will have an opinion on this.
Yeah, I think that first of all, I think Christians are often too deep, right? I think when you refer to the idea of like the ideology that a lot of people will, or the phrase that people will throw out rather, that people they entertain that, but they didn't minister, right? And to minister is to literally just to serve the needs of the people, right? That's on behalf of. If you're talking about in a Christian context, you're serving the needs of the people on behalf of Christ, right? And so if you're entertaining, that is a form of ministry, right? So if you're entertaining Christians in a loving way, in a clean way, that is a form of ministry in itself. And so I think often the separation is because we try to put things in sacred and secular boxes that shouldn't really be there. And so I think that was one of the first things I'll say. But and I think secondly, one of the elephants in the room is definitely where the church, how the church has evolved, specifically the Black church, to the point where I'm not sure we've allowed room for people that aren't worship leaders to really have a safe space. Now, it's very different if you're someone like Ty Tribbett who does both. Ty Tribbett can electrify the stage, but then he will have a moment or moments of pure worship, quote unquote, in his set as well. But there's some artists who don't do that, who are just gonna, I guess for lack of better words, like just do the entertainment thing. But I don't know that we've allowed room for those artists to thrive. If you think about like where gospel was some years ago, and where it is now, you think about artists like Natalie Wilson and SOP or Trinity 5-7 and Virtue and those types of artists. There's not really room for that anymore. If we're totally honest, if you're not able to deliver that worship element, it's like there's almost no space. And if you look at like, I know this is something we're going to discuss another time, but artists like Lecrae, Black churches don't book him, anymore. They used to, but now we've moved to a phase where we're not even singing our own songs anymore, and so like artists that aren't delivering that kind of like worship space but that want to, it's almost like I think they've got to now find another audience, because the church audience doesn't seem to be as receptive to that as they once were. So if you're someone like Called Out, you're blessed to be able to do both, right? And so whether you want like to make just people jump and feel good, or you want to have worship, that he can do both for you. But I think when you're only doing one, and that one does not include being a worship leader, I don't know if
there's a space for you anymore.
Really room for you anymore. So I think that's one of the things that will have to be discussed, because I think a lot of artists, I think you mentioned it to Matty earlier, have felt pressured to include that and do something that they're not really quote unquote called to do, because otherwise they can't survive or thrive in the church space. And so sustainability becomes an issue. So I think that's definitely something that has to be
that's Ryan, that's brilliant. And I think that's probably the root of the question, where it's like, we can say what we want to say. Like Matty said, there's no rules. And we would all agree with that if we're just having a one-on-one conversation. There's no rules and all that. But all of a sudden, as Ryan says, you try playing by that, there's no rules, you won't really have a career, or you won't get very far. So I want to come back to you, Called Out, and say, because you're, as I say, 50% Afrobeats artist, 50% worship leader. And I love it, bro. I think I've made that up. He's not said that, I've made it up. But I absolutely love it, because when I went on and checked out your music, and I heard, like, especially your latest single, and I was like, yo, this bangs. And then I checked out the album that came out recently, and I was like, wow. All of a sudden, he's doing like full-on worship music, and then this Afrobeats, and I'm like, why would he do that? Like,
that's the no rules.
Exactly. Now, usually musically, we know, we play for all these pop artists and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's not the done thing. The moment you deviate from script or whatever, management's getting all shaky in their boots, pulling the album off the shelves, all the rest of it. Whereas you now have somehow made it your formula. So what I want to ask is, did you just think, today I'm writing a worship song, tomorrow I want to do a zonto, I want to go, like, or was it a conscious decision to do that because you wanted to service two different audiences, or maybe have a more public face with the Afro beats because it's hot right now, or is it's just you?
That's interesting because I don't even make Afro beats like that. That's like the crazy thing. It's like it's been a couple, but I get exactly what you mean. But I think when I first started in 2016, the first couple of songs I put out were very like almost like ballady type. Yeah. And then I now looked at it. I was like, look, I'm a kid in my room, like I told you, making music on the internet, and the internet is a big space. Yeah. I need to like cause something, like get people talking, and that's when sort of the Afrobeat elements started coming in. Yeah. And then I started getting invites to churches. And when I started getting invites to churches, I realized that a lot of the people there loved the artistry stuff, but I realized that I had to sing other people's songs before I got to my bit. Wow. So I would go to churches and sing like covers, cover, and then, these are my songs right at the end. So the way I started to write music started to change a bit. So I was still writing my songs, but making some bits more catchy, some bits more congregational, but it was still me. So now we did the HF Music City Live last night, and I did a 35-minute set and did not sing any cover. Wicked. And it's like, it's amazing because everyone in the comments was like, it was amazing because people in the comments was like, oh, I love this song. Oh, I love this song. And then we got a tour plan for like next year. Amazing. And there's like 20 songs that I'm confident to go to anywhere in the world and do. And it's like, that's in the space of 4 years because I've been intentional about making sure that, look, this is the music that I'm creating. And the truth is, you just have to do you. Like, it gets to a point where I'm in a space where there are people like Travis Green, who is an artist, but he's like a worship leader artist type, like Todd Galbraith. You have people now in the scene who are worship leaders at heart, who are putting those worship songs out there. My songs aren't always like worship songs, but at the end of the day, there's still a space for me. Completely. And I know there's a space for me because I'm creating that space for myself. So if you go on my page, the covers that I put up is like, it's going to be vibes. You're going to be on my page scrolling down because you're like, oh, I loved how he twisted that. Oh, I love how he twisted that. Oh, he's got a single out. Let me check it out. And it's like, completely. It's all like keeping people in the loop. It's like, look, there are other ways of creating Christian content and you're going to check it out. If you don't do that for yourself, you're just going to get left behind because it's just going to be filtered out. Completely. You know?
One point I wanted to make, I hear what you're saying with regards to when you were a new artist, you would sing covers. Same in the circular world or secular world, is that, you know, when artists are new and they might be doing an open up on a support tour, you know, they incline to do songs to get the audience on their side. So they'll, you know, they might drop in a little Coldplay, you know me, just to, you know, break it up, break, you know, just, you know what I mean, break people in. So they're like, okay, I know that song, they're familiar with it, and then they can kind of then launch into their songs, do you know what I mean? So I think, again, it's down to the artistry side of things coming into that with the gospel as well. But yeah, that was my feedback. Forgot what else I was going to say, but you know, it's all good, you know.
No, it does. It actually does. It makes a lot of sense because right now in the UK, as small as we are, I would go to like a concert and everyone before me going up, they were singing worship and praise songs. Yeah. Definitely. And sometimes if I'm being 100, I feel mad awkward. Because to go on there and do my own stuff, because everyone is coming in and singing songs that everyone knows and everyone's been slain, and then act after act after act is singing God I look to you, and I'm coming in thinking, oh my Lord, should I switch this up? And I always switched up my set till 2 years ago. Wow. And I had a chat with my manager and he was like, you're not making all this content putting on Spotify and then to not go somewhere and not sing it.
I agree, man.
Exactly.
Like, and at that point, that's when things started to change because I realized even though people are just there looking at me, they're going back and who's this guy? And it's like, let me go listen to his stuff. And I started going to places and at most And that's when I started doing the covers. The covers came in as like, how about I take a well-known worship song and do it my way?
Yes.
So it's like, I'm going to do an Ancient of Days my way.
Yeah.
I'm going to do I did a shout to the Lord thing recently.
Yeah.
So I'm going to release that and then be
Wicked.
like, I'm going to do it my way. So I'm still giving people content, but it's my
And people
content.
are singing your way. As like I said to you off air, my
Yeah.
church sang his Ancient of Days.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what I started doing, because I took that pressure off myself. So God willing, I can walk into anywhere. If I get
do
called,
whatever,
I would always walk in, even if I'm on my guitar.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sing my songs.
Yeah.
Not in a sense. Obviously, like Noel said rightly, like you get to some places and you're sensitive. You're like, oh, I have this song in my spirit, and it's always good to go with that sometimes. And obviously, the Holy Spirit would always guide you along with it, knowing the audience as well. If I'm doing a concert for younger people, there's a certain type of songs that I'll
that
play.
you're gonna sing, exactly.
I went to Kojic the day I graduated, and I literally led worship and did one of my songs at the end.
Wow.
That was kind of like slow paced, and it worked.
Yeah.
So there's obviously that part to bear in mind as well. But to every artist out there, I always say, do your thing, because no one's gonna come and sing your songs if you don't.
Okay, so that's a good segue into my next question. Have you guys noticed that, and it's kind of what we've been saying, but let's talk musically now. Even if people are saying they're not worship leaders, they're making worship music. Not just worship music, CCM style worship music. So nobody now has a JC 120 doing any kind of jazz patches. Everybody now has got distortion pedal and open hi-hats and playing quarter notes and all
heartbeat cymbals.
and all the rest of it, right? Nobody, all of a sudden, that now is everybody's music.
Yeah.
Help me understand why even us as black people who like all different kinds of music, but I know for me, during the week, I listen to like soul music, maybe something jazzy, R&B, maybe some Afrobeat, whatever. So for me, when I go to church on a Sunday or I hear an artist that I like, I want that reflected in their music. Not every artist, but artists that I like. But what happens to me if even the artists that I like are now all doing One Direction style or like Busted style? Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of sound, or like Tim Hughes, Matt Redman, that kind of sound of music. Where do I get my fix?
It's crazy.
Somebody. Everybody's looking at me like, girl, I don't even know.
Can I say something to that?
Please.
No.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to be aware of is culture. Culture is one of the strongest forces that is in the world, and we are either partakers in culture or we go against the grain of culture. And in a way, I've been a musician for, how many years? I've been playing since I was 6. The first music I ever heard was country and western, because my dad, growing up in church, they didn't like reggae. Reggae was a taboo music, so I never grew up on reggae.
Jim Reeves
So
and that, yeah?
Don't ask me anything about reggae. I really don't know, apart from Bob Marley.
Yeah.
Okay, now, this is because of the culture that I was in.
Yeah.
My dad loved country and western.
Jim Reeves?
So the first thing I learned to play was country and western. I first heard gospel music when I must have been about 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
And the reason why I heard that music was because here was some Windrush young people birthed out of the Windrush movement. There's 40, 50 of us in the church singing the songs that our parents sang, playing the music that our parents liked, which is kind of country ska type music. And we needed to find a music that we could identify with. And all of a sudden, we heard this Hawkins, I'm going away, all these songs. And it's like a group of black people dressed in robes, singing all this contemporary stuff we'd never heard before. And we automatically drifted to it. But before that, I was listening to Gary Moore. I was listening to Clapton. I was listening to all these rock guys. And that's the music that was in my head, right? Because culture was teaching me the reason why I speak with this accent is because of where I was born.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? Now, culture dictates to me quite a lot of things. Now, when we got involved with the gospel music, that began to dictate. But outside the gospel, if I started to play jazz in church, they'd go, that's not church music. If I decided to play, let's do a little soul music. What? Soul music? What's that? No way. Motown is not godly. So culture has dictated so much. As I've grown up with this music, I realized that my message has grown and the people I'm trying to reach has changed. The audience is not Pound Lane Church, where there's 100 black people who have come from the islands and they're doing the ska music. Goodbye, world. Not that music no more. And my vocabulary and my understanding, my revelation has changed. And I want more people to hear my heart. Therefore, there's an element that I have to grab. And I go, well, I want to explore doing hip hop. So I've got on my album some rapping. I did a song with Governor B. Because I wanted to bring that element into my music. People didn't grab hold of it, but that's neither here nor there.
Who asked you? Go.
But I got an album called Devoted, which was exploring loads of different styles. I did a reggae song with Chevelle Franklin. I did a rock pop stuff, all these kind of stuff I was doing on the album because I was exploring the music as well as trying to bring the content together. So I think that we are either people that stir and change culture, or culture actually totally dictates what we do. We are creators or we are copiers.
Okay, I hear you, Noel, but for me, I totally hear what you're saying, but I still don't have an answer to my question. Everybody,
Say it one more time.
Everybody, artists, worship leaders included, is a soft rock artist.
It's what's popular. That's it.
Absolutely. That's why I said if you're a creator or you're a copier or a creator.
I'm hearing what you're saying, but I heard what you're saying about and I guess that's really the truly British experience, because Britain is really, at least London, is a melting pot. And other cities are melting pots of different cultures. So I get all of that. But this is happening worldwide for a start. It's not just in the UK, but definitely in the UK, everybody all of a sudden is in love with soft rock.
I hear you.
Go on.
But like if you go to a Caribbean church, an old school Caribbean church, you'll get the soft rock elements in certain places.
Yeah.
But when they're ready to go back to the old school and they start,
it's not wrong.
if you go to an African church, I used to play at African church for a good couple of years, and I had to learn how to play high life, and it was sink or swim. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's like so it's down to culture. I think. I don't think every church. I think a lot of the mainstream churches, they might promote.
Well, this is the thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm talking. Now we're talking about what we're ingesting on Spotify, iTunes, the music people are putting out. I'm not talking about Sunday afternoon, because every so often I put on like one of my dad's old high life records and I will dance.
That's why I said earlier, I feel like not everyone, but some people should actually come with the, cool, there isn't any rules here, let me try and create something else. So even though Uncle Noel did say, like, it's either you're a copier or you're a creator, it's kind of true, because it's either you copy or you kind of create something new. Cool, that's created something kind of new.
Definitely.
And there's been loads of people in the past in like the whole gospel industry here and all over the world that I saw things for the first time that I never saw before. Like Ty Tribbett, I never saw people with like, wearing like Converses and school ties and looking like they're in a classroom. Like as a choir, I never saw that before. Do you know what I mean? But is he the first person to do that sort of stuff? Or?
Yeah, it's just that preppy look. Definitely, Ty Tribbett was definitely the start of a culture.
Exactly. So, but if he was just like, no, I've got to follow these rules, then they would have just been up there with robes, innit?
Yeah,
not saying it would have been dry, innit? Not saying it would have been dry,
yeah, but it wouldn't have been something different. Yeah, definitely. I hear you.
Do you remember?
Sorry. No, Bex wanted to say something before.
No, because you're going to link to that. Go on, because then.
No, I was going to say, but if you check out Hezekiah Walker, they run the robes thing. Live in Atlanta, they run the jacket, the Blazers. They had the orange, the yellow, the you know what I mean? So it's all that again. That was my point again. Artistry. It's mixing the artistry with, because I think when you start saying to yourself, okay, cool, yeah, the music songs, we've got the songs, we've got the lyrics, but I want to mess about with some lighting here. I want to, at this point, let's dim the stage. And that's
And
then
the no
artistry
rules. That's
part
the
of it.
no rules mentality. I'm not saying it ignorantly, but I'm saying.
Go ahead, Bex.
Go on,
Sorry.
Bex. I'm tired of you lot. Right, no, but I think, right, one of the things that I think, especially here, a lot of our praise and worship leaders, whatever, saw the coin.
Okay.
Straight up. They saw the coin that was being made by the likes of the Hillsongs and the Bethels and Everybody saw the money and was like, well, I'm not really making any kind of change in my church. Let me start putting out music that sounds like this, but still got a little bit of soulful flavour because of the way we sing, the way we enunciate, all that stuff. So I can add my little touch, but I'm still doing this. But you know what? I'm about to get some coin now because I've joined, I'm in that league. That's, for me, that was one of the major things that flipped. Sorry. Like, I know everyone's trying to stay saved a little bit. But if we, and I'm still saying that, but it's like, you know, fact is fact. People saw the money that was being made, and we're doing this full time. So we have to eat. Like we were saying in last season, we have to eat. People have to eat. People have to pay bills and all sorts. So at some point, people are seeing that actually there's something to be seen here.
I hear it.
Because what I'm doing, me putting out my skida bap bap badoo day ain't working no more. So let me
On that note, Ryan.
I think the reason why that stopped working was because we started singing their songs. I mean,
because that's where the money was.
But that shift in culture, I think, was down to because if we're honest, when that whole thing really started, I mean, if you want to go back to like history and stuff, it really started with Shout to the Lord. But in terms of where it really started, in terms of where the shift came, when our gospel artists started to change their sound, a lot of that started when like a lot of my generation, we grew up in church and then we left church, we went to university. And a lot of them like left their houses, left their hometowns, and then they started going to churches like Hillsong and that type of stuff. And one thing that those churches did, which a lot of black churches didn't do as well, is they had very good like university groups and ministries and stuff that really like reached the students. And then those students left and came back to their church and brought that sound with them. And then you know, on kind of like to what Bex was saying. I think people saw like just a new wave and a new opportunity and started to shift gears. But I think really that was down to us. I don't think because let's be honest, when it comes to white and black church, most gospel artists have made their money from black spaces, not from white spaces, right? And so, but when we were fine doing that until we discovered this kind of new, like, oh, this is cool, this is new, this is different, and let's put our own spin on it. As we do really well as black people, we put our spins on everything, and it works because we're creative like that, right? But I think a lot of it was down to just us abandoning our own culture. I don't necessarily think this had to happen. I think we made the decision to follow, because they didn't. I mean, the CCM church didn't force us to follow their model. We willingly did it. We volunteered it. They didn't come into our churches and be like, oh, you guys should start singing our songs. For some reason, we volunteered it. We volunteered ourselves and volunteered our culture, gave it up, and then, you know, and now we're kind of here. And it's funny because we complain so much about, you know, which is an issue, like, you know, racism and that type of issue when it comes to the CCM and the white versus black church, which is a problem. But then it's hard. I mean, how do we complain about that? But then we're patterning their culture.
Yeah, but then
we have to take responsibility for that.
It goes right back to my point. What was on the radio? What did you hear? It wasn't gospel, it was CCM. So that's how they invited themselves into where we were. We heard it, that's what was being played. We weren't being played. So if we're not being played, but you hear something's being played, you're like, hold on. Every station I turn to, they're playing.
But who was playing it? Like, would
you say a lot of artists folded to that? Fact. Do you think they kind of just broke to it?
Of course,
they kind of just. So it's like, obviously,
absolutely.
This is a whole different like genre.
Absolutely.
Yeah? But you would hear like, I remember in school, and then you hear like those grime artists like, nah man, he started singing pop, and then when the pop never worked for him, he started coming back to grime. Then when grime started to blow, it was like, big man. Like, why are you coming back for?
Absolutely. Facts.
I think. Can I interject here? I always say culture is seen, heard, and felt. Those three components of culture actually secure secure gravity in that space. And one of the issues, like, you know, Ryan sort of mentioned about stuff that's introduced into the culture that now becomes your way. You know, language that's introduced into culture, even music, you know, music shifted from back in the day when I was playing it. Do you know what I mean? At the start, the chords are still the same, actually. It's just different beats, different things that, and I kind of think that when it comes to praise and worship, what was happening is that we as young people growing up, we became so familiar with the expression of the ska and the expression of this is how we, you know, the kind of Caribbean context. And we were looking for something new. And then we heard Black America sing gospel music and we went, wow.
Yeah.
Because we could see ourselves, we heard ourselves, and we could feel it. And then we went, whoa. But along's come what we, if you want to call it CCM, which is not really CCM, it's just rock music simplified, simply because of the forces outside of the music. People wanted to make worship attainable to everyone. You know, there's 40,000 churches in the UK, right? And most of them are between 100, the average number is 150. And they don't have musicians that can do Kirk.
Right,
they don't have musicians that could do Ty Trebek. They can't do this music because this is Mary, who's 45, has got 2 kids. She's a school teacher. She can only play by music. That stuff can't be written down. The singers, you got Jack, who's a 15-year-old kid who loves to play drums. Mate, he's got no experience of anything. So what we find is that what the worship world decided to do is that we want to make the truths available for everyone. It so happens that as a Black church movement, we are so creative, but we were not writing truths. We were singing the old stuff. Jesus rubbed me on my back and you know, I'm going to put a dance in my feet, blah, blah, blah. We weren't singing some authentic truths, hence why this crazy migration to the truth. But unfortunately, truth's encased in this 4-chord trick. So if you're going to sing it, you're either going to change it musically or you're going to, and this is what's happened. And we go to university, we come back from university, we've experienced something different from the rice and peas and chicken and hard-o bread. We've experienced something different now, and we're going, we want some of that because it's actually in our culture now. And I think that those are part of the thing. So it's not against the music, it's actually culture has moved.
I'm hearing you. I'm
on the fence.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna have to wrap up.
I know exactly how it feels right now. Go ahead.
I know. We're gonna have to wrap
That's
up.
how our
shortly.
parents feel. But that's how our parents feel about what we do.
No, but do you know what it is? What it is for me, I still, and this is going to have to be another episode again. Season 3, because we've kind of shifted now into talking about musical styles, culture, understanding.
Which I think everything's gonna go.
Yeah, because what I really think is that it's okay for people to like soft rock music, and I think it's actually okay for there to be a whole generation or side of people that play 13th, 11th over because there's enough people in the world that can play that and understand it and absolutely love that. That everybody doesn't have to conform to one thing. So I think in the conforming, what's happening is a lot of people are watering their own expression down and they don't even know why. Do you know what I mean? So
that's what I was going to say.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like
watering your expression is not the issue. Are we watering down the truth?
No. I don't think that it's all wrapped because so for instance, some of the choruses, like you mentioned, some of the Caribbean choruses, they're all good, but gospel music hasn't been the sum total of gospel music. Like I can all right, so complete top of my head, because you will know what I'm talking about, Noel. Let's take a Basil Mead LCGC song or whatever, or let's even take like a Fred Hammond song, right? There's all kinds of truth in there, but we would now turn around and say that that's not actually. I'm gonna flip it. There's so my brother's a writer, praiseworthy. A lot of people go on the internet and find it. There's all truth in these songs, but it's not CCM. So it probably won't get sung. So it's not really about the content. It's right now we're talking about, do you like R&B? Do you like hip hop? Do you like jazz or whatever? And I think that there's enough to go around for everybody.
You know, though, I think one of the factors that led to this whole discussion, because what we're really talking about is, the worship leader and artist thing, and having a space for people that just want to do the artist thing and not necessarily are called to be worship leaders, right? But what happened was there was when streaming and stuff became really big and that kind of the digital world took over, everyone knows that like sales in the industry really plummeted, and gospel is one of the, every genre got hit, but gospel got hit really, really badly by that. And what happened is, I could take an example. When Corinne Hawthorne put her first album out, she sold, I think, 2,000 copies in the first week, right? And that's streaming included, 2,000 in the first week. For King and Country, which most people, I don't know if you guys know, most of you probably know for King Country, but the album was released around the same time as hers, right? They're a CCM artist, she's a gospel artist. She sold 2,000 copies in the first week and hit number 1 on the gospel charts, right? Their album sold 60,000 in the first week and hit number 1 on the CCM charts. So that's a huge disparity between how well CCM is still able to do, even with sales dropping, versus how well gospel's doing. And I think that's where Becky's point comes into it, is that they saw that, okay, this sound, people aren't buying this anymore. Like, this doesn't seem to be working as much. And then, now you bring the pandemic into it, you can't even tour. That's where they were making their money. These gospel artists were only making their money at churches on the road. Now they can't even do that. Yeah. And so I think we have to, again, what I was saying earlier, like, take some responsibility in saying that in order for like this issue to change, we have to take some pride in, like, bringing back and appreciating and singing our own expression and our own sound. Otherwise, these artists can't survive. They have to go to the CCM. Tasha Cobbs has to do that because she got to get some of that white money, because the black money is just not. It's just not enough. And that's just the harsh truth. Travis Green's got to get some of that white money, and so he can't. You know what I'm saying. So I think it's.
Man. Guys, I'm gonna call it right there. That's a perfect place to call it, because you know what? you're now giving us the food for season 3.
White money that irked you, man.
No, has to be, because we've now organically, as always happened, we've kind of moved into a different space from the original conversation, because now I feel like we're in artist territory. Yeah. We've spoken worship leader and all that kind of thing, and there's kind of like the vocational side that you spoke about, bro, and then now we start talking about the artistry side. It opens this whole other can of worms where it's like, who is your audience? Why are they your audience? What's that based on? Is that even okay? Why is it okay? Do you see what I mean? And I feel like we do need to discuss at some point our culture as black people and where it's gone. If I'm honest.
You have to define it.
Yeah, okay, let's define it.
Are we doing anything?
You can't. I think every culture should.
But I mean, like, legit, like, are we doing anything about it? Like,
this is the thing. I think it's another conversation. I have to be strict. Else we're going to be here for 3 hours.
If it's about music, like, what are we doing?
No, I know, I hear you.
There's a writing session.
I'm hearing you, bro.
Are we actually
being active? Being active.
You know what I mean?
All right. So I'm going to give the last word to my brother called Out Music. Bro, what would you say, in summary, to somebody who is trying to come into that space as an artist, or feels themselves to be a worship leader, or they've got a voice? What would you say how they should approach? Should they think about what we've been discussing, or should they just authentically be themselves? Like, what's smart?
Definitely, I think they should definitely think about it, but they should also come to the realization that from what we've spoken about, there is a culture, there is a wave at the moment. That's just the harsh truth. So you kind of have to ask yourself, am I gonna be a part of it, or am I gonna stick out like a sore thumb? But the truth of the matter is, if you choose to stick out, be prepared, because it's not gonna be easy. Because the whole worship movement is sound in a certain way. Wow. So if you're gonna stick out like a sore thumb, just be prepared. Have your stuff together. Have your marketing. Have all those things that people take for granted. Have that, know your audience. Know the people that support your music, and then go for it. Because I found it tough at times, but I found that the more I stuck to what I know and stuck to my guns, it's got easier. And then what you now have is a lot of people now start to gravitate towards you. Yeah. So you start to bring people in because you're sticking out. So you just have to, am I going to stick out, or am I going to conform?
Perfect. And with that, here endeth the great debate for today. Guys, thanks for coming. Bro, thanks for coming, man. It's been great to have you. Definitely. Thanks to the guys. Noel, Ryan, thank you. We out of here. Please go on to our YouTube channel, Top Entertainment, and find all past episodes and all future episodes. And yeah, just let us know what you think in the comments, and let's keep the discussion going.